A critical step in a home energy assessment is the evaluation of utility bills. If you don't know how much is being spent on energy in a home, it's impossible to predict how much energy efficiency improvements will actually save a homeowner. You'll also likely find that few homeowners spend much time scrutinizing their utility bills. In some cases, this is because they're not very easy to understand. In most cases, bills are just paid as an expected part of monthly living costs. Utility bills can also provide insight into how energy is being used in a home and how that varies throughout the year. This module will introduce heating and cooling degree days and how these affect utility costs. It also presents samples of utility bills for home electricity and heating fuel, including natural gas, oil, and propane. We'll also discuss the steps to map energy costs in a home and how a utility bill analysis can be used to estimate the potential cost savings of specific energy efficiency measures. Utility bills provide the facts about how homeowners are actually spending money on energy. A detailed analysis of utility bills can help reveal specific levels of energy use for heating, cooling, and other purposes. Heating and cooling degree days vary from one climate zone to the next and can help inform a utility bill analysis. It's intuitive that the number of hot and cold days given throughout a year will affect energy costs. To estimate these costs, designers use degree days of different regions to characterize the number and severity of heating and cooling days throughout the year. This is a graph of heating degree days distributed over 12 months for multiple years and averaged for use in calculating and predicting heating energy costs. Let's take a look at how these are calculated. Heating degree days are a measure of how cold a location is over a period of time relative to a base temperature, which is commonly 65 degrees Fahrenheit. The measure is computed for each day by subtracting the average of the day's high and low temperatures from the base temperature of 65 degrees, and negative values are equal to 0. Each day's heating degree days are then summed, usually over the course of a year, to develop a measure for that period of time. Heating degree days are used in energy analysis as an indicator of space heating requirements that are experienced over the course of a year. Here's an example for a given day in which the low temperature is 15 degrees and the high temperature is 35 degrees. The average of these two would be 25 degrees. Subtracting this from our base of 65 degrees would yield a total of 40 heating degree days. This calculation is done for each day over the year and then summed. In some zones in the United States, over 7,000 heating degree days are experienced. Similarly, a cooling degree day is defined as the measure of how warm a location is for a period of time, and again 65 degrees is used as the base temperature. A measure is computed for each day by subtracting the base temperature average from the day's high and low temperatures, and again with negatives set to 0, and subtracting that average from 65 degrees. Each day's cooling degree over the course of a period of time is then summed, and we usually calculate the total cooling degree days that are experienced over a given year. Cooling degree days are then used in an energy analysis, an indicator of air conditioning energy requirements or use. Here's an example for a given day with a high temperature of 85 degrees and a low of 65. The average between these two would be 75 degrees. Subtracting 65 base temperature from this would yield 10 cooling degree days for this day. This calculation would then be done for every day of the year and summed, and in some zones we may have over 2,000 cooling degree days. As you can imagine, the number of heating degree days will vary year to year, so we maintain records and average them over time. This graph shows the monthly heating degree days for a given location between 2004 and 2012. As you might expect, there are virtually no heating degree days in July, with the highest levels measured in the winter months of January and February. Clear variations can be seen. In December, for example, variations of over 400 heating degree days were found over different years. This graph shows how cooling degree days can vary throughout the year in the Northeast, with variations being measured between 2004 and 2012. Cooling degree days are of course concentrated in the summer months, with none at all found during the winter months. And similarly, a variation of 300 cooling degree days in the month of July was experienced. Heating and cooling degree days are tracked and recorded by a number of agencies and averaged to help design heating and cooling systems. This map, created by the Department of Energy, illustrates zones with variable heating and cooling degree days distributed throughout the country. Let's take a closer look at electric bills. They come in very many shapes and sizes, and they're increasingly advanced and automated. In this particular case, the cost of electricity for the billing period is $46.67, and this is for a total charge for 275 kWh or kilowatt hours for their particular time period. The delivery charge in this case is 8 cents a kilowatt hour for the month. Delivery fees cover the utility's maintenance cost of lines and meters and administration. This might show up as a distribution or transmission charge, and either a fixed delivery charged or a variable delivery charged. The generation charge is 8.8 cents per kilowatt hours and reflects the cost of utility either for generating or acquiring electricity. It's worth noting that the delivery charge and generation charges are separate because many utilities are just focused on the distribution of energy through pipelines and power lines they manage. Some utilities do produce their own energy, but most buy blocks of electricity from various generation sources, including coal, natural gas, nuclear plants, wind farms, and solar energy plants. Depending on your region, the energy you get from a utility is typically a combination of these types of sources. Some bills include the average consumption over a day or a month. If a solar installer looks at your electric use to design a photovoltaic system, for example, that's appropriately sized, she'll be using your average kilowatt hour consumption, so the system can be designed to generate the equivalent amount of electricity over the course of a year. A monthly graph is also useful to help show how use changes over the years. In this case, winter costs are rising, indicating the use of electricity for some heating loads. Summer charges for electricity are likely to be plug loads and perhaps air conditioning. In this case, there appears to be no air conditioning because the summer charges aren't that high. Electricity costs are in general on the upswing, and they vary regionally based on issues of production and demand. They're typically on the rise nationally, with a national average of about 11 cents a kilowatt hour. Hawaiians, on average, pay over 26 cents a kilowatt hour. Factors affecting costs include the amount of local coal used, changes in state regulations, and the adoption of metering policies. Increasingly, electrical consumers have more choices about where and when they buy electricity. Many homes have natural gas service, and the distribution of natural gas is on the upswing. Important numbers to find on a gas bill include the amount due, which is the total due for the billing period, the delivery charge, which is for bringing gas to your home or business, and this can vary with the volume of natural gas you use. The gas charge is what it costs the gas company to buy natural gas on the open market. Taxes and fees imposed by local and state governments can represent up to 10% of a bill. Some of these are flat and others are based on usage. Some companies provide historical summaries, which can be helpful in assessing how costs vary over the course of a year. In this particular bill, the peak cost is in January, indicating natural gas is being used for heating. In August, the bill is much lower and is a good estimate for gas being used for other loads, such as hot water. Natural gas prices have been on the upswing since 2000, but are holding steady now due to significant increase in domestic production of shale gas. Oil bills are a little harder to come by, as heating oil was rapidly becoming too expensive in regions compared to natural gas and electric heat pumps. Deliveries are made based on a company's predictions of need and not on a regular basis. As such, a bill may not be indicative of average use. In this case of oil bills, it's better to get 1 to 2 years worth of bills to indicate average costs. In this particular example, we've got the date, and note that this bill is pretty old, the gallons delivered in this particular instance, and the cost, which was only 20 cents a gallon. Those were the days. The actual payment that's due is also indicated. It's important to note that depending on the weather, the size of the home, and the efficiency, the annual cost for fuel oil can vary between 50%. Heating fuel has been increasing since the year 2000 and has actually tripled between 2000 and 2012 due to a number of factors including increased global demand and uncertainty about global supply. In rural areas and places where natural gas is not available, propane is a popular choice for heating and cooking. Propane is rarely delivered on a regular basis, but similar to fuel oil, delivered when a company estimates that you're low based on past usage. This example from the AmeriGas website includes the account balance, which is the total due for the current activity, the summary of activity, including the date, reference number, and amount of propane that was used in gallons, and the payment that's due. Propane is actually a byproduct of natural gas and oil refining, and depending on the source, the cost will vary in a similar manner to those two sources. Since the year 2000, the average national cost of propane has tripled. This pie chart provides an average distribution of home energy use in the United States. How energy is spent in homes is of course variable. After assessing utility costs, an important next step in home energy assessment is attributing different home energy uses to the appropriate utility bill. For example, a home might have a natural gas furnace, hot water heater, and clothes dryer. In this case, measures taken to insulate, save hot water, or upgrade appliances would affect the gas utility cost. In another case, a home may have a propane furnace and fireplace and an electric hot water heater. In this case, insulation measures would affect propane costs, but hot water efficiency measures would affect electrical costs. In a home with heat pumps and all electric systems, all efficiency measures would be mapped to the electricity bill. Again, mapping how energy is used is a simple but important step in estimating the potential savings of energy efficiency measure you might recommend in a home. Professional energy auditors can determine a great deal of useful information by analyzing utility bills. Utility bills can help create an energy profile and identify the energy used for specific purposes in a home. A low energy usage profile over time can verify, for example, that a home is potentially performing well, and considerations can be given for more energy generation and upgrade measures. A high energy profile may provide clues to examine envelope, heating, and cooling systems and controls. A utility bill profile can be compared to other homes of similar characteristics to inform behavior impacts in a home. Utility bills help make sense with the house facts and homeowner behavior. For example, high electric bills in the wintertime may be attributed to the use of a space heater that's being used to supplement the furnace in a home. This graphic depicts what an annual energy distribution curve might look like for a particular home. The energy has been used and identified for domestic hot water heating, which is the level load on the bottom in therms, for heating costs in therms, for base electrical costs in kilowatt hours, and for cooling load in kilowatt hours. Notice the heating months are highest in January and February and create what are referred to as the shoulders of the energy loads. Cooling loads peak in the summertime, as you might expect. Domestic hot water loads are pretty steady throughout the year, but may be higher slightly in the winter due to colder pipes and greater losses. Electric loads are also only indicating minor variability, but tend to be higher in the winter months due to increased cooking and increased time spent indoors. Here's another example of electric bill that we're going to take a look at a little more closely. As you've conducted an assessment in a home, you may have found in this case that a homeowner has an old gas furnace and a gas hot water heater. You may question why electric loads are so high in the winter months in a home that has a gas furnace. Perhaps this is because there's some supplemental electric heaters that are in use, which would be good to look for in a home. Similarly, costs are spiking in the summer. It might be worth looking into the potential opportunity to improve the efficiency of the air conditioning systems in a home. Spring and fall months can represent base electric loads for all the other items in a home not related to heating and cooling. Here's an example of a gas bill. In this case, you can learn from the homeowner that they have a natural gas-powered hot water heater, stove, and a central heating unit. The heating loads show up as spikes in the winter months, which is pretty intuitive. Combined use for hot water and cooking are indicated in the summer months when the furnace is not in use. In this case, it might be challenging to separate the gas and cooking energy use without further questions from a homeowner. They might indicate, for example, some periods of low cooking time, for example in the summer when they use their grill more often, and facts like this may illuminate how much energy they're actually using for just hot water. So this module introduced the idea of how utility bills can be scrutinized to understand how homeowners are actually spending money on utility costs. We discussed heating and cooling degree days, which influence heating and cooling costs. We reviewed key information found on utility bills. We reviewed how to map energy use in homes and how utility bills can be analyzed over time to identify the specific use of energy for hot water or cooling or other specific loads. With this knowledge, you'll be better equipped to help estimate how much homeowners can potentially save on energy costs through the implementation of various energy efficiency measures that have impact on specific utility bills.